You're worthless trash. Trash, Nia. You were nothing before me, and you'll be nothing after me. Preston Langford said it loud. He stood up in the middle of a Fairfax County courtroom, pointed at his wife, and said it like he was ordering coffee. His attorney grabbed his arm. Preston shook him off. 4 years I wasted dragging around dead weight. You think that little doctor title changes what you are? Please. Nia Thompson sat across the aisle, hands folded. She didn't flinch. She didn't respond. The judge stared. The court reporter's fingers froze above the keys. The whole room held its breath. And nobody, not Preston, not his lawyer, not a single person in that gallery, had any idea that Nia's mother was already in the parking lot. Her mother, a federal judge. Have you ever watched a man destroy his entire life with his own mouth? Man, he really just said all that out loud. Let's see how this plays out. Let me take you back. Arlington, Virginia. The alarm buzzed in a small one-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of a red brick building. Nothing fancy, clean countertops, a coffee maker already set on a timer. The smell of dark roast filled the kitchen before Nia Thompson even opened her eyes. She sat up on the edge of the bed, rubbed her face with both hands, took a breath. This was her life now. Some time since she moved out of the house she paid for. Some time of sleeping alone in an apartment that could fit inside her old living room. Some time of quiet. She preferred the quiet. Nia walked to the bathroom, brushed her teeth, pulled her hair back into a low bun. She stared at herself in the mirror for a long moment, not out of vanity, out of something closer to a pep talk without words. Today was the day. On the kitchen counter sat a stack of medical files. Nia was a pediatric cardiac surgeon at Georgetown University Hospital, one of the youngest department leads in the hospital's history. Howard University undergrad, Johns Hopkins Medical School. A Rhodes Scholar plaque hung on the wall next to the front door, the only decoration she had bothered to unpack. Next to the coffee maker sat a framed photograph, a tall, silver-haired black woman in judicial robes, beaming, pinning a medical badge onto a younger Nia's white coat. That woman was Judge Vivian Thompson, United States Court of Appeals, D.C. Circuit. 30 years on the federal bench, twice shortlisted for the Supreme Court. That woman was Nia's mother. Nia picked up the photo, ran her thumb across the glass, set it back down, poured her coffee. She didn't call her mother this morning. Vivian had said she had a conflict on her calendar and couldn't make it to the hearing. Nia told her it was fine. She meant it. She had handled worse things alone. Some time ago, Nia married Preston Langford. They met at a charity gala in Georgetown. He was charming, confident, wore a nice suit, laughed at all the right moments. He pursued her with the kind of energy that felt flattering at first. It stopped being flattering fast. Within the first year, Preston started making comments. Small ones at first, a joke about her hair, a remark about her neighborhood growing up, a laugh when she mentioned her family's church in Southeast D.C. Then the jokes stopped being jokes. "You're lucky I married you." He said that during an argument about dishes. That degree doesn't change what you are. He whispered that one night after dinner with his parents. His mother had spent the entire evening calling Nia so articulate. Behind closed doors, he called her ghetto when she raised her voice. He called her aggressive when she disagreed. He told her she should be grateful. Every single day, he found a new way to make her feel small. She endured it for some time, quietly, the way she had been taught, with dignity, with patience, with the hope that people could change. They don't. She filed for divorce on a Thursday afternoon. Preston laughed when he got the papers, actually laughed. Then he hired the most aggressive attorney he could find and told anyone who would listen that Nia had used him and thrown him away. The divorce had dragged on. Preston wanted half of everything. The house Nia paid for, the cars in her name, the investment accounts funded by her surgical bonuses. His attorney, Harlan Brooks, filed motion after motion, subpoenaed her colleagues, demanding financial records, turning a straightforward divorce into warfare. Preston's mother, Vivian Langford, even submitted a written declaration. She called Nia difficult and ungrateful. She wrote that Nia had never truly fit in with the family. The language was careful, the meaning was clear. But Nia's attorney, Lena Brooks, was ready. She had spent months building a case file that read like a textbook on domestic abuse. Text messages, voicemails, bank records. Everything is documented, everything is time-stamped, everything is admissible. Now Nia stood in front of her closet. She chose a navy blazer, simple gold earrings, flat shoes. She looked professional. She looked calm. Inside, her stomach was a knot. She grabbed her keys, locked the apartment door, and drove to Fairfax County Family Court. Her brother, Marcus Williams, a retired Marine, was already there, sitting in the gallery, saving her a seat with his jacket draped over the chair beside him. Her mother's seat stayed empty. The courtroom filled. The bailiff called the room to order. Judge Carla Moore entered and took the bench. The hearing began. Harlan Brooks stood up first. He buttoned his jacket with one hand and walked toward the center of the courtroom like he owned it. Mid-50s, silver watch, hair slicked back, the kind of lawyer who practiced his opening statement in the mirror every morning. Your Honor, my client, Preston Langford, gave 4 years of his life to this marriage. Harlan paused for effect. Let that sentence sit in the air. He put his ambitions aside. He managed the household. He created the stability that allowed Dr. Thompson to pursue her medical career without distraction. Harlan placed a folder on the edge of the judge's bench. Inside, you'll find financial records showing that Mr. Langford covered household expenses during Dr. Thompson's residency. Groceries, utilities, car insurance. While she was building her career, he was keeping the lights on. He turned slightly toward Nia, not enough to look at her, just enough to make sure the judge noticed. She wouldn't be where she is today without my client's sacrifices. And now, after everything he gave, she wants to walk away and leave him with nothing. That's not a partnership. That's abandonment. Lena Brooks didn't react. She wrote something on her notepad, a single word. She underlined it twice. Judge Moore nodded. Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Mr. Langford, you may take the stand. Preston stood up slowly. He adjusted his tie, ran a hand through his hair, then walked to the witness stand with the posture of a man who believed every room he entered was lucky to have him. He sat down, took a breath, and began performing. Your Honor, I just want to say this has been the hardest year of my life. His voice cracked slightly. Practiced. I loved my wife. I gave her everything I had. I supported her through medical school, through residency, through those long weeks when she was never home. He paused, looked down at his hands. I sacrificed my own career growth because I believed in hers. I handled the house, I handled the bills, I made sure she had a home to come back to every night. Another pause, a slow exhale. And then, one day, she just decided I wasn't enough anymore. He shook his head. The picture of a wounded man, the performance of a lifetime. Brooks stepped in with soft, rehearsed questions. Did you ever feel neglected during the marriage? All the time, Preston said quietly. She was always at the hospital, always working. I'd cook dinner and eat alone. I'd go to bed alone. After a while, I started to wonder if I even mattered. And when you raised these concerns with her, she told me I was being dramatic. Preston's jaw tightened. She said I should be grateful she was providing for us, like I was some kind of charity case. In the gallery, Marcus Williams shifted in his seat. His jaw clenched. He had heard Nia's side of this story. Every word Preston said was a mirror image, flipped, distorted, reversed. Nia sat still. Her pen rested on the table. She didn't write. She didn't react. She had already lived through every lie he was telling. Hearing them again under oath didn't make them more true. It just made them louder. Judge Moore made notes. Her face gave nothing away. Then Lena Brooks stood up. Mr. Langford, she said calmly, you testified that you covered household expenses during your wife's residency. Is that correct? Yes. And you characterized this as a significant financial sacrifice. It was. Brooks opened a folder. I'd like to enter Exhibit D into the record, Your Honor. These are complete bank statements from a joint account held by Mr. Langford and Dr. Thompson between the relevant years. She slid copies to the judge, to Brooks, and placed one in front of Preston. Mr. Langford, can you tell me who deposited the regular amount into this account on the first of every month during your wife's residency? Preston glanced at the paper. That was a shared arrangement. The deposits came from Dr. Thompson's residency stipend. She deposited her entire paycheck into this joint account. You used that money to pay the bills you just described as your sacrifice. Isn't that correct? Preston's smile faded. She still needed someone to manage it. Manage it? Brooks repeated the words like she was tasting something sour. Let's move to Exhibit E. She placed a new stack of papers on the stand. These are mortgage records for the marital home. The home is located in McLean, Virginia, valued at $1.2 million. Mr. Langford, whose name is on the mortgage? Silence. Mr. Langford? Hers. And who made every single monthly payment over the last several years? She did. But I, Exhibit F. Vehicle registrations. A BMW X5 and an Audi A6, both registered to Dr. Nia Thompson. Both paid in full by Dr. Thompson. Mr. Langford, do you own a vehicle in your name? Preston's neck turned red. I drive the Audi. You drive it. You don't own it. Brooks let that distinction breathe. Exhibit G. Investment portfolio statements. Total value, $680,000. Funded entirely by surgical bonuses earned by Dr. Thompson. Mr. Langford, did you contribute any amount at all to this portfolio? I supported her emotionally. That has value too. I'm asking about financial contributions, Mr. Langford. No. Brooks closed her folder, opened another one. Now I'd like to discuss the nature of that emotional support. She pulled out a printed sheet. I'm entering Exhibit H, a series of text messages sent from your phone to Dr. Thompson over the past couple of years. Preston sat up straighter. His fingers gripped the armrest. Brooks read the first message aloud. August 14th. From Preston Langford to Nia Thompson. You think that degree makes you better than me? You're still just a girl from Southeast. The courtroom was silent. October 2nd. Nobody respects you. They just feel sorry for you. Preston's jaw tightened. He looked at Brooks. Brooks didn't look back. December 19th. Your mother is the only reason anyone takes you seriously. Without her, you're nothing. Brooks set the paper down, picked up a small USB drive. Your Honor, I'd also like to enter Exhibit 1, an audio recording of a voicemail left by Mr. Langford on January 3rd at approximately 11:40 p.m. She pressed play. The courtroom speakers crackled. Preston's voice filled the room, slurred, loud, unmistakable. You'd be nothing without my last name. Nothing. You hear me? You should be thanking me every day for making you somebody. The recording ended. The silence that followed was heavier than anything he had said. Nia still hadn't moved. Her pen sat untouched. Her eyes stayed forward, but her brother Marcus was gripping his knees so hard his knuckles had turned pale. Brooks stepped closer to the stand. Mr. Langford, you testified that you supported your wife emotionally. Do these messages represent the kind of emotional support you were referring to? Preston's face flushed red. His composure cracked. She's twisting everything. She always does this. His voice rose sharply. He leaned forward in the chair. She plays the victim. That's what they do. The word dropped like a stone into still water. Every person in that courtroom heard it. The judge, the attorneys, the bailiff, the gallery. Judge Moore's pen stopped moving. She looked up slowly. Mr. Langford, her voice was ice. You will address this court with respect. Do I make myself clear? Brooks was already leaning over, whispering urgently in Preston's ear. Preston exhaled, smoothed his tie, forced a smile that looked like it hurt. My apologies, Your Honor. I'm just emotional. This has been very difficult for me. Judge Moore stared at him for 3 full seconds before she looked back down at her notes. In the gallery, the court sketch artist was drawing fast. The court reporter's fingers hadn't stopped. Every word was on the record, and Nia Thompson still sat perfectly still. Not because she was weak, not because she had nothing to say, because she knew what was coming, and it hadn't even started yet. Judge Moore called Vivian Langford to the stand. Preston's mother rose from the second row of the gallery. She smoothed her cream-colored blazer, touched the pearl necklace at her throat, walked to the witness stand with her chin tilted slightly upward. the posture of a woman who had never been questioned about anything in her life. She sat down, crossed her ankles, folded her hands in her lap, smiled at the judge, the way you smile at a neighbor across the fence. Brooks approached her gently. "Mrs. Langford, can you describe your son's character during his marriage?" "Preston is a good man." Vivian's voice was warm, rehearsed. "He was a devoted husband. He tried so hard to make that marriage work. I watched him bend over backwards for that woman." That woman. Not Nia, not Dr. Thompson. That woman. "And how would you describe your relationship with Dr. Thompson?" Vivian tilted her head. "I tried. I really did. But she was not quite the right fit for our family. I always worried the cultural differences would be too much." Brooks nodded like this was a perfectly reasonable thing to say. Lena Brooks was already on her feet. "Mrs. Langford, you mentioned cultural differences. Could you be more specific about what you mean?" Vivian blinked. "I just mean lifestyle, upbringing. The way she was raised versus the way Preston was raised. You know?" "I don't know, actually." "That's why I'm asking." Vivian's smile tightened. "We come from different worlds, that's all I meant. It's not a criticism, it's just a fact." Brooks nodded slowly, then opened a folder. "Mrs. Langford, I'd like to read a text message you sent to your son on March 15th. This has been entered as Exhibit J." Vivian's smile vanished. Brooks read it aloud, slowly. "Every word is clear. I told you not to marry outside your kind. Now, look at the mess." The courtroom went dead quiet. Not a shuffle, not a cough, even the air conditioning seemed to pause. Vivian's face was drained of color. Her fingers tightened around each other in her lap. That was taken out of context. What context would make that statement acceptable, Mrs. Langford? I was upset. Preston had called me crying. I was just being a mother who told her son not to marry outside his kind. That's not what I... Those are your words, Mrs. Langford, sent from your phone to your son on March 15th. Is there another way to read them? Vivian opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. Judge Moore's expression had turned to stone. She wrote something on her notepad, underlined it, wrote something else. "No further questions," Brooks said. Vivian stepped down from the stand. She didn't look at anyone. She walked back to her seat in the gallery with her eyes fixed on the floor. Her pearls caught the fluorescent light as she sat down. Her hands were shaking. Preston watched his mother return to her seat. His face had changed. The performance was gone. The rehearsed grief, the wounded husband act, all of it had evaporated. What was left was something raw, something ugly. He leaned over to Brooks and muttered loud enough for the first 2 rows to hear. "This is a joke. She's going to take everything I built." Brooks whispered back sharply, "Keep your voice down, now." But Preston was past listening. Brooks stood again. "Your Honor, I'd like to present the final financial summary, Exhibit K." She distributed packets to the judge and both attorneys. Then she walked to the center of the room. Over the course of this marriage, Dr. Thompson earned a combined gross income of approximately $1.8 million. Mr. Langford earned approximately $280,000 during the same period. Dr. Thompson paid the mortgage in full. She paid both car payments in full. She funded the entire investment portfolio. She covered medical insurance, property taxes, and home maintenance. Brooks paused. "Let the numbers sit. Mr. Langford's financial contribution to the household over 4 years totaled less than 9% of the couple's combined income. And the expenses he did cover, groceries, utilities, minor household items, were paid from a joint account funded primarily by Dr. Thompson's deposits." She turned to Preston. "Mr. Langford's claim that he built anything in this marriage is not supported by a single document in this record." Preston's face went scarlet. His chest rose and fell. His hands gripped the edge of the table. Brooks put a hand on his shoulder. "Don't," he whispered. Judge Moore looked at Preston. "Mr. Langford, before I begin deliberation, do you have anything you'd like to add?" That was a mistake. Or maybe it was exactly what the moment needed. Preston stood up. Brooks grabbed his arm. "Sit down, Preston. Sit down." Preston pulled free. He was shaking, not from sadness, from rage. The kind of rage that comes when a man who has always believed he was above everyone else suddenly realizes the room doesn't agree. This whole system is rigged. His voice cracked. She gets everything because courts always side with... He stopped himself, but only for a second. Then he turned, looked directly at Nia, and let it all out. You're worthless trash, Nia. You hear me? Worthless. Trash. He slammed his palm on the table. The sound echoed like a gunshot. You were nothing before me. That fancy degree doesn't change what you are. You want to play the strong black woman? Fine. Play it. But we both know the truth. The gallery erupted. Gasps. A woman in the back row stood up. Marcus Williams rose to his feet, fists clenched at his sides. The bailiff stepped forward with one hand on his belt. Preston still wasn't done. And your mother? He pointed toward the empty seat in the front row. That self-righteous woman. She poisoned you against me from day one. She looked at me like I was beneath her, like I wasn't good enough for her precious daughter. He laughed, a short, bitter sound. A judge. Big deal. She's just another Mr. Langford. Judge Moore's voice cut through the room like a blade. Her gavel came down hard. Twice. 3 times. You are in contempt of this court. Sit down immediately, or you will be removed in handcuffs. Do I make myself absolutely clear? Brooks physically pushed Preston into his chair, both hands on his shoulders, pressing down, whispering something fast and furious into his ear. Preston sat, but his chest was still heaving. His eyes were still locked on Nia. His lip curled. The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that feels louder than any scream. The court reporter's hands trembled above the keys. The sketch artist's pencil had snapped. The bailiff stood 2 steps closer than he had been a minute ago, and Nia Thompson had not moved, not 1 inch. Her back was straight, her hands were folded. Her eyes were glassy but steady. She exhaled slowly through her nose, one long, controlled breath. She had heard worse from him, behind closed doors, in whispered insults over dinner, in voicemails at midnight. This was just the first time he had said it where the world could hear. All right, I gotta stop right here because, this man really just said that in open court on the record. His lawyer is literally wrestling him back into the chair. And he's still talking? Sir, please, I can't even breathe right now. Judge Moore called a recess. Her voice was calm, but her jaw was tight. She stood and disappeared through the door behind the bench without looking back. The room exhaled. People in the gallery whispered. Some shook their heads. One older man in a gray suit stood up and walked out muttering something under his breath. A young woman in the back row had her hand over her heart. Nia rose slowly. She picked up her folder, tucked it under her arm, and walked out of the courtroom into the hallway without a word. Marcus followed her. He didn't say anything at first. He just walked beside her. Then he put one hand on her shoulder, a steady hand, the hand of a man who had carried a rifle through deployments and still believed the hardest battles happen at home. Nia leaned against the wall, closed her eyes, and for the first time all morning, she let out one long, shaking breath, the kind of breath that carries everything you've been holding. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out. One new message from Mom. I'm on my way. 10 minutes. Nia stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. She typed back slowly. Mom, you don't have to. 3 dots appeared. Then I'm already in the parking lot. Nia looked at Marcus. He looked at her phone, then back at her. Neither of them said a word. But something shifted in Nia's eyes, something quiet, something that looked a lot like the moment before a storm breaks. She put her phone away, straightened her blazer, and walked back toward the courtroom door. Court reconvened. The gallery filed back in, chairs scraped, whispers faded. The bailiff called the room to order. Judge Moore returned to the bench. Her face was unreadable. Preston sat with his arms crossed. He stared at the table in front of him. Brooks had stopped whispering to him. There was nothing left to say. Nia took her seat. She set her folder down, folded her hands, same posture, same stillness. But something was different now. There was a steadiness in her shoulders that hadn't been there before. something settled, something ready. Judge Moore opened her mouth to speak, and then the doors opened. Not fast, not dramatic, just a slow, deliberate push. Both doors at the same time. Every head in the courtroom turned. A woman stepped through. She was tall, silver-haired, dressed in a charcoal suit with a silk scarf folded at the collar. Her shoes clicked against the tile floor, steady, unhurried, precise. Each step carried the same rhythm, the rhythm of a woman who had walked into rooms like this for 30 years and never once needed permission. Judge Vivian Thompson. She did not scan the room. She did not search for a seat. She walked straight down the center aisle with her eyes forward, her chin level, her back as straight as a cathedral wall. The bailiff saw her first. His posture changed instantly. Shoulders back, chin up. He gave a small nod, the kind of nod that isn't taught. It's earned. A woman in the gallery leaned to her husband. "Who is that?" He shook his head, but he sat up straighter too. Everyone did. The room shifted without anyone deciding to shift. The air changed weight. Judge Moore looked up from the bench. Her pen stopped moving. Her eyes widened, just slightly, just enough. She knew exactly who had just entered her courtroom. Vivian reached the front row of the gallery, the seat that had been empty all morning. She turned, sat down, smoothed her jacket once, folded her hands in her lap. Then she looked at Nia. It wasn't a grand gesture. No wave, no smile, no words. Just a mother looking at her daughter. A single, quiet nod. "I'm here." Nia's chin dipped, barely a centimeter. Her eyes glistened for half a second. Then she was still there again. On the other side of the aisle, Brooks leaned toward Preston. "Who is that?" Preston muttered. He glanced over his shoulder at the silver-haired woman in the front row. "That's her mother, the one I was just talking about." Brooks's face went white. Not pale. White. Like every drop of blood had left his body at once. He grabbed Preston's arm, hard. "That is Judge Vivian Thompson." Brooks's whisper was barely a breath. D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. She's one of the most senior federal judges in the country. Preston blinked. "So? She was on the short list for the Supreme Court. Twice." The word "twice" landed on Preston like a physical weight. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. He turned slowly and looked at Vivian Thompson again. She was already looking at him. Not glaring, not scowling, not angry. She simply looked at him, the way a woman looks at something small, something she has seen 1,000 times before, something that does not surprise her and never will. 30 years of staring down corrupt officials, corporate lawyers, hardened criminals who had done things Preston couldn't imagine. She had looked at all of them with this same face, patient, unshakable, absolute. Preston turned back around. His legs started bouncing. He stared at the table. He couldn't look up. The room had changed. Everyone felt it. The bailiff felt it. The court reporter felt it. The sketch artist felt it. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to buzz at a different frequency. Judge Moore cleared her throat. Before the recess, the court heard testimony from both parties and reviewed all submitted exhibits. Her voice was precise now, sharpened. "I also observed the respondent's conduct in this courtroom today, which has been entered into the record in full." She paused, looked at Preston. "Mr. Langford, I want to be very clear. This court has a complete record of every word you spoke today. Your statements, your tone, and your behavior will be weighed accordingly in my ruling." Preston didn't move, didn't nod, didn't breathe. Vivian Thompson sat perfectly still, hands folded, eyes forward. She didn't need to speak. She didn't need to intervene. She didn't need to do anything at all. She was there, and that was enough. Judge Moore delivered her ruling without hesitation. After reviewing all evidence, testimony, and financial documentation submitted by both parties, this court finds the following. She looked directly at Preston. "Mr. Langford's claim to equitable distribution is denied. The evidence overwhelmingly demonstrates that Dr. Thompson was the sole meaningful financial contributor to this marriage. The mortgage, vehicle payments, investment accounts, and the vast majority of household expenses were paid entirely by Dr. Thompson." Preston's mouth opened slightly. Brooks placed a hand on his arm. Preston didn't even notice. Mr. Langford is awarded his personal belongings only. Dr. Thompson retains full ownership of the marital home, both vehicles, and all investment accounts. Judge Moore flipped a page. Additionally, this court finds Mr. Langford in contempt for his conduct during today's proceedings. He is fined $5,000 and warned that any further disruption in this courtroom or in any communication with Dr. Thompson will result in immediate incarceration. She removed her glasses, set them on the bench, and said the last part slowly. The language used by the respondent today was not merely disrespectful, it was dehumanizing. This court does not tolerate racial animus in any form. Mr. Langford, your words are on the record. They will follow you. The gavel came down. Once. Final. Preston sat frozen. His mouth moved, but nothing came out. He looked at Brooks. Brooks was already closing his briefcase. In the front row, Vivian Thompson did not smile, did not nod, did not move. She simply watched justice do what justice does when it's given the truth. The courtroom emptied slowly. People stood in small clusters, whispering. The sketch artist tore off her page and started a new one. The bailiff held the door open with the expression of a man who had just witnessed something he would talk about for years. Nia walked into the hallway. Marcus was beside her. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. Then footsteps, fast ones. Nia. Nia, wait. Preston jogged up behind her. His tie was loosened. His hair was out of place. His eyes were red and darting. Everything about him had changed. The arrogance was gone. What replaced it was something smaller, desperate. Listen to me. I didn't mean it. His voice cracked. I was angry. You know how I get when I'm angry. I say things I don't mean. Can we just talk about this? Please? Nia stopped walking. She turned around slowly, looked at him, really looked at him. Maybe for the first time in 4 years. You said exactly what you meant. Her voice was quiet, steady. For the first time in 4 years, you told the truth. She turned and walked away. Marcus stepped between them. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. He was 6'2", 220 pounds, and the look on his face said everything. Preston didn't follow. Sometime later, Preston stood in the parking lot with Brooks. So what's next? Preston asked. We appeal, right? We can... There is no we. Brooks set his briefcase on the hood of his car. I'm withdrawing as your counsel, Preston. You can't do that. You're my attorney. I was your attorney. Past tense. Brooks opened his car door. You made my job impossible in there. And frankly, what you said was indefensible. I won't be associated with it. Find someone else. He got in, started the engine, drove away without looking back. Preston stood alone in the parking lot. The sun was directly overhead. His shadow was a small dark shape at his feet. A minute later, Vivian Langford walked out of the courthouse. Preston turned to her, waiting for comfort, waiting for his mother to tell him it would be okay. I told you to keep your temper. Vivian's voice was cold, flat. I told you, Preston, over and over, and you couldn't hold it together for one single hearing. Mom. Now look at what you've done to this family's name. She wasn't sorry for what he said. She was sorry he said it where people could hear. She walked to her car, got in, drove away. Preston stood alone, jacket wrinkled, tie crooked, no lawyer, no mother, no wife. The courthouse door behind him closed with a heavy click. By evening, the court transcript, every word of it, was public record. A clerk who had been in the courtroom mentioned it to a colleague. The colleague mentioned it to a friend. The friend was a journalist. By that night, reporter Natalie Adams from a Northern Virginia news outlet had the full transcript on her desk. By morning, Preston's employer, a regional insurance firm where he worked as a mid-level claims adjuster, received 3 phone calls asking if they were aware of what their employee had said in open court. He was placed on administrative leave, effective immediately. The dominoes had started falling, and not a single one was going to stop. Natalie Adams published her article the next morning. The headline read, Husband's racist tirade in Fairfax court goes viral after federal judge mother-in-law walks in. The article was thorough. It included the full context of the divorce proceedings, Nia's career, the financial evidence, Preston's outburst, quoted directly from the court transcript. And the moment Judge Vivian Thompson walked through those doors, by noon, the article had been shared 40,000 times. By evening, it was everywhere. Cable news picked it up first, then national papers, then social media took it and ran. Clips of the courthouse exterior, reporters outside, people reacting as they left, circulated on every platform. Someone in the gallery had sketched Preston mid-outburst, finger pointed, face twisted. That sketch became the image everyone shared. The hashtag started small. A few accounts, a few retweets, then it caught fire. Hashtag JusticeFornia. It trended for 3 straight days. Legal commentators appeared on morning shows and evening panels. They dissected Preston's language. They broke down the court transcript line by line. One former federal prosecutor said on camera, "What, mister?" Langford said, "Wasn't just offensive. It was a textbook example of racial animus used to dehumanize a spouse during litigation. Any judge in the country would have held him in contempt." Another analyst pointed to the text messages entered as evidence, the ones where Preston called Nia just a girl from Southeast and told her she'd be nothing without his last name. "This wasn't a one-time outburst," she said. "This was a pattern. The courtroom was just the first time he couldn't hide it." Then, the former colleagues started talking. One by one, people who had worked alongside Preston at the insurance firm came forward. They spoke anonymously at first, then some used their names. A former coworker told Natalie Adams that Preston routinely made jokes about black clients. He called their claims suspicious more often than white clients with identical paperwork. He once said in a team meeting that certain neighborhoods weren't worth insuring. When a black supervisor was promoted above him some time ago, Preston told a colleague, "This place is going downhill." The insurance company had no choice. They released a statement on Thursday. 3 sentences, corporate font, company letterhead. "We do not tolerate hate speech or discriminatory behavior of any kind. Following a thorough internal review, Mr. Preston Langford's employment has been terminated, effective immediately. We are committed to fostering an inclusive workplace for all employees and clients." Preston read the statement on his phone while sitting in his mother's guest bedroom. He had moved back in some time after the hearing. He had nowhere else to go. But losing his job was just the beginning. Lena Brooks filed a civil suit the following week. Emotional distress, defamation. The filing cited Preston's courtroom outburst, the text messages, the voicemails, and the sustained pattern of racial abuse throughout the marriage. The text messages were already public. The voicemail, the one where Preston slurred that Nia would be nothing without his last name, was played on 2 national news broadcasts. Legal experts called it devastating. Preston needed a lawyer. He called 4 firms. The first said they had a conflict of interest. The second said they weren't taking new clients. The third never called back. The fourth was honest. "Mr. Langford, I read the transcript. I listened to the voicemail. I'm going to be straightforward with you. There isn't a firm in Northern Virginia that wants to be the face of your defense right now." He eventually found representation, a solo practitioner named Alan Burke, who worked out of a small office above a dry cleaner in Manassas. Burke was competent, quiet. He reviewed the case and gave Preston one piece of advice: settle, quickly, before this gets worse. Preston resisted at first. "I'm not giving her another dime." Burke set the file down. "Preston, you called your wife worthless trash in front of a judge. You referenced her race. It's on the record. It's on the news. It's on the internet forever. If this goes to trial, a jury will see every text you sent, hear every voicemail you left, and watch you sit in that chair while your own words play on a speaker. You will lose, and it will cost you everything you have left." Preston settled. The terms were not gentle. A significant financial payment to Nia, essentially returning any remaining shared assets, plus damages for emotional distress, court-mandated anger management, a racial sensitivity program, 12 months minimum for both, and a restraining order. No contact with Nia. No contact with her family. No contact with her workplace. No approaching within 500 feet. Violation meant arrest. No warnings. No second chances. Preston signed the papers in Burke's office on a Tuesday afternoon. He didn't speak. He signed each page, stood up, and walked out. Through all of this, Judge Vivian Thompson said nothing publicly. No interviews, no statements, no press conferences, not a single quote attributed to her in any article. Reporters called her office. Her clerk responded with the same line every time. Judge Thompson does not comment on personal family matters. She didn't need to comment. Her presence in that courtroom had already said everything. Legal blogs wrote about the moment for weeks. Judicial commentators analyzed it from every angle. One professor at Georgetown Law wrote an op-ed that captured it perfectly. Judge Thompson didn't need to say a word. She didn't intervene. She didn't pull rank. She sat in the gallery like any other mother and let the system do its work. And in doing so, she reminded everyone in that courtroom and everyone watching from the outside that justice isn't just a concept written in textbooks. It's a living, breathing institution. And sometimes it shows up wearing a charcoal suit. In the months that followed, Nia Thompson did what she had always done. She worked. Georgetown University Hospital featured her in their annual report. A medical journal published a profile on her pioneering techniques in pediatric cardiac surgery. She was invited to speak at Howard University's commencement, her alma mater. She stood at the podium in a black gown. She did not mention Preston. She did not mention the divorce. She did not mention the courtroom. She talked about resilience, about self-worth, about the difference between what people call you and what you answer to. Someone will try to define you, she told the graduates. They will use words designed to make you small. Let them talk. Your job is not to argue with small people. Your job is to keep building something they could never tear down. The auditorium stood, every single person. Nia smiled, looked down at the front row. Her mother sat there, hands folded, eyes shining, the same quiet nod. I'm here. So, where are they now? Nia Thompson was promoted to Chief of Pediatric Surgery at Georgetown University Hospital 6 months after the trial. She bought a townhouse in Alexandria, her name on the deed, her money on the check, her choice on every wall, every room, every detail. No one else's opinion is required. She started a mentorship foundation for young black women pursuing careers in STEM and medicine. She named it Thompson Forward. The first class had 14 mentees. The second class had 40. By the third year, there was a wait list. She never spoke publicly about the divorce, not once. Reporters asked. Podcast hosts asked. She declined every time. Her work spoke for her. It always had. Judge Vivian Thompson continued serving on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. She handled cases the way she always had, with precision, fairness, and a silence that carried more weight than most people's speeches. At a private family dinner sometime after the dust had settled, Vivian set her fork down and looked at her daughter across the table. I didn't walk into that courtroom as a judge, she said. I walked in as your mother. She paused. But I'm proud that both of those women saw justice done that day. Nia reached across the table and held her mother's hand. Neither of them said anything else. They didn't need to. Marcus Williams stayed close. He checked in on Nia every Sunday. Phone call at 9 a.m. Never missed one. He later told a reporter off the record, my sister didn't need saving. She needed witnesses, and that courtroom gave her plenty. Lena Brooks went on to handle several high-profile divorce cases involving domestic abuse and racial discrimination. She credited the Langford case with changing how courts treat verbal abuse when it's racially motivated. Before this case, too many judges dismissed racial insults as emotional outbursts, she said. After this case, that excuse doesn't fly anymore. And Preston Langford? He lost his career, his savings, his social standing, his reputation. He completed the anger management program. He failed the racial sensitivity course on his first attempt, passed on his second. Barely. He moved into his mother's spare bedroom in a small town outside Richmond. He did not remarry. He did not find new employment in the insurance industry. His name was the first result on every search engine, attached permanently to the transcript, the articles, and that sketch of him pointing across a courtroom with rage on his face. Vivian Langford stopped attending her garden club. She told neighbors she was taking a break. The neighbors knew why. Everyone in town had read the article. Everyone had seen her text message. Don't marry outside your kind. Those 5 words followed her the way Preston's followed him. Okay, real talk. This story, made up, fiction. But while you were listening, be honest. You weren't thinking, nah, this is fake. You were thinking about somebody you know, somebody who's been called worthless. And that part, that's way too real. So, let me ask you something. If you were sitting in that courtroom gallery, if you heard someone say those words to another human being right in front of a judge, right in front of everybody, would you have stayed silent? Or would you have stood up? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to hear it. And if this story hit you somewhere real, if it made you feel something, do me a favor. Hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Because we've got more stories like this coming. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's next. One last thing. Your worth is not decided by the person standing across from you in a courtroom. It's not measured by someone else's anger or ignorance or fear. Your worth was settled long before they ever opened their mouth. Don't let anyone rewrite that story for you.